My name is Connor, and this is the story of how my life and the peace of my family was systematically dismantled by the very people I trusted most. It's a story of a hidden betrayal that ran so deep it forced me to question everything I thought I knew about human nature. A betrayal that ultimately came to light through one single, accidental recording. In 2008, my wife Rachel, our 2 young kids and I moved to a quiet suburban street called Maple Lane. It was everything you'd imagine a perfect neighborhood to be. Tree-lined streets, annual block parties, and neighbors who felt more like an extended family. For 15 years, this was our sanctuary, the place where we thought we'd live out the rest of our lives. The subtle shifts started about 8 months ago, a slow drip of unease that grew into a flood of paranoia. Mrs. Henderson, our next-door neighbor who used to bring us cookies every Christmas, suddenly started looking right through me whenever I'd wave. Her smile, once a constant, was gone, replaced by a cold, blank stare. The change was so abrupt, it felt like I was living in a bizarre social experiment. Soon after, the official complaints began. Our homeowners association, a once friendly group, became a source of constant harassment. One week, a notice arrived claiming our grass was too long. The next, a violation for our car being parked incorrectly on our own driveway. Then came the accusation that our fence, which had been in place for 5 years and professionally surveyed, was 6 inches into our neighbor's property. Each week brought a new, increasingly absurd accusation. The breaking point arrived during our annual 4th of July block party. Rachel and I showed up with our famous potato salad, a dish that was always the first to disappear. This year, it sat untouched on the table. Conversations would stop as soon as we approached, and a palpable tension hung in the air. Our kids, Emma and Tyler, came running to us, confused and heartbroken, because their friends' parents were suddenly forbidding them from playing together. Feeling completely lost, I pulled aside Tom Martinez, my closest friend on the street. We'd coached Little League together and shared countless beers over the years. I thought if anyone would give me an honest answer, it would be him. But when I asked what was going on, he just shrugged and said, "Maybe you should think about what you might have done to upset people." His cold words were a punch to the gut. When I pressed him, he simply walked away. That night, Rachel and I sat on our back porch, trying to make sense of the sudden isolation. We were good neighbors. We kept to ourselves, maintained our property, and were never a source of trouble. It felt like we were living in a real-life version of the Twilight Zone, where the world around us was the same, but the rules had fundamentally changed. Things escalated quickly after that. Someone called animal control, claiming our dog, Buddy, a gentle 12-year-old golden retriever who could barely make it up the stairs, was aggressive. A city inspector showed up, saying there were reports of an illegal business being run out of our garage, a completely fabricated lie. Our trash cans were knocked over the night before pickup, scattering garbage across our driveway. The final straw came when Emma, who was only 10, came home from a friend's house in tears. Mrs. Peterson, a neighbor we'd known for years, had told her that her daddy was a bad man and that she should stay away from our house. It was at that moment I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coordinated attack. Driven by a need for answers and a desperate need to protect my family, I decided to install discreet security cameras around our home. I wanted proof. For 2 weeks, the footage was uneventful. Just neighbors walking by, pointedly avoiding eye contact with our house as if it were a plague zone. Then, on a Tuesday evening in late September, I got a break. Rachel was at her book club and the kids were doing homework inside. As I reviewed the day's footage, I saw 3 of our neighbors, Mrs. Henderson, the Garcus from across the street, and Mr. Thompson from the corner house, gathered in Mrs. Henderson's backyard. Their body language was intense, and they kept glancing toward our house and pointing. I couldn't hear them, but their coordinated movements and secretive huddle told me everything I needed to know. They were plotting. I watched as Mrs. Henderson went inside and came back out with what looked like a laptop. The 3 of them hunched around it, their glances in our direction becoming more frequent and pointed. It was clear our family was their topic of conversation. The next day, I made a decision that would change everything. I borrowed a high-powered directional microphone from my brother-in-law, who worked in film production. My gut told me they would meet again the following Tuesday, and I was going to be ready. I positioned myself in my upstairs bedroom, the microphone aimed directly at Mrs. Henderson's backyard. As if on cue, they gathered again. What I heard in the next 30 minutes was a cold, calculated plan that shattered my entire perception of the people I had considered friends for over a decade. I heard Mrs. Henderson reading from a list. "Next week, we need to make sure someone calls about the noise complaint during their barbecue," she said. "And Maria, didn't you say your cousin works for the health department? We might need that contact soon." "What about the property line issue?" Mr. Thompson asked. "The surveyor we hired confirmed what we already knew," Mrs. Henderson replied. "Their fence is exactly where it should be. But the official report doesn't have to reflect that, if you know what I mean." My blood went cold. They weren't just fabricating complaints. They were orchestrating a full-on smear campaign, bribing officials and attempting to create official falsified documents to ruin us. But why? The answer came when Maria Garcia spoke. "I still think we should have just made an offer on the house directly. This seems like a lot of work just to get them to move." Mrs. Henderson laughed. "Are you kidding? They paid $400,000 for that place. Now that the market's gone crazy, it's worth at least $750, maybe $800. If we can get them desperate enough to sell, we can lowball them at $550 and flip it for a massive profit." In that moment, everything clicked into place. This wasn't about something we had done. This was about money. They wanted our house, and they were willing to drive my family to the brink of desperation to get it. But the recording wasn't over. Mr. Thompson asked about an online campaign, and Mrs. Henderson's chilling response was that she had created fake social media profiles to spread lies about us on neighborhood apps. That's why our reputation had been so swiftly destroyed. That's why parents were suddenly afraid of us, and why my friend Tom had turned cold. They had been feeding lies to everyone on the street for months. I recorded everything, every word, every conspiratorial laugh. I had almost 40 minutes of crystal-clear audio documenting their entire scheme. When they finally dispersed, I spent the rest of the night researching lawyers who specialized in criminal conspiracy and harassment. The next morning, I had a consultation with Patricia Williams, a seasoned lawyer. She listened to the recording with a stone-faced expression. When it was over, she looked at me and said, "This isn't just harassment, Mr. Connor. This is criminal conspiracy, fraud, and possibly extortion. These people have committed multiple felonies." Within days, we filed lawsuits against all 7 neighbors involved. The lawsuits were a starting point. We took the evidence to the police, and within 2 weeks, criminal charges were filed against the main conspirators. Mrs. Henderson, the ringleader, was arrested at her home. The local news picked up the story, and the article went viral. "Neighbors conspired to drive family from home for profit" was shared thousands of times. Everyone on the street now knew exactly who these people truly were. The civil suits moved forward quickly, our evidence so overwhelming that most of the neighbors settled out of court. Mrs. Henderson, who lost her job because of the news coverage, was forced to sell her home to pay the settlement. The irony was not lost on me. She had tried to force us to sell our house and ended up losing her own instead. 6 months later, I received a call from Patricia. The fake surveyor report they had commissioned had been used in 3 other similar schemes across the city. Our evidence had helped uncover an entire network of real estate fraud, leading to federal charges. Today, our neighborhood is peaceful again. Most of the conspirators have moved away, and the new neighbors are decent people. Emma and Tyler have their friends back, and Rachel and I can sit on our back porch in peace, a peace that was nearly stolen from us. I often think about how 15 years of trust can be destroyed by greed, how people you consider friends can become enemies over money you didn't even know they wanted. But mostly, I'm grateful. Grateful that I found out who they really were before they succeeded in destroying our family's life. The recording that exposed everything is now evidence in multiple court cases. A testament to the fact that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's simply letting people's own actions speak for themselves.